Hello, I'm Mark, co-founder and director of Wise Up. Wise Up is a Bolton-based organisation, but we work up and down the country. It's been going for the last 8 years, and ultimately it was to turn a negative into a positive. We talk all things mental health, stress, resilience, habits, addictions, and we raise awareness through delivering bespoke packages to a number of different environments, from schools, businesses, prisons, football clubs. We're really passionate about our work, and we're also a proud supporter and partner to the Manbassadors project, and I'm also a Manbassador myself, so I know the importance of the role. I know the importance of asking for help, but also helping others. At the age of 15, I found out I was going to be a young dad, and I found that really tough. And at the time, I was a promising young footballer playing at Man City. I was sort of brought up to be the strong, silent type and try and get on with things, and the term back then was man up. But ultimately finding out I was going to be a dad at 15, I found really tough. I was crying myself to sleep most nights. I found it really difficult. And I didn't know where to turn, to be honest, and I bottled them feelings up. And eventually them feelings came out and me escaping to other things, and I was reintroduced to my father, who'd been absent out of my life for a very long time, and I started gambling with him. And that's how I coped with stress and worry and anxiety. I latched onto that behaviour, which was gambling, and that became very problematic for me for a very long time. And that habit turned into a problem, and that problem turned into a full-blown addiction. And throughout my 13 years of gambling, but also struggling with my mental health, I always tried to, like I said, man up. And I don't like that term now, but that is what I thought. I thought if I asked for help, it was a sign of weakness. But I'm so glad that there were people around me that intervened, asked questions, and I don't say it lightly, them people that did ask them questions for me, at times it felt like it was life-saving, and the weight that it lifted off my shoulders was absolutely massive. So I'm really big on, people asking questions, showing support, and sometimes just asking someone are they okay can be absolutely life-saving and certainly life-changing. First off, I want to say a massive well done for putting your name forward. There's a good chance you're a kind, caring, supportive person, but also that you care about the people in your community, and that's really important when it comes to the role of being a Manbassador. It's likely you'll get people opening up, sharing their vulnerabilities, and sometimes you might be that first person that they open up to. So it's a really important role. You need to be a good listener, you need to be kind, you need to be supportive, you need to show empathy, and I think that's really important when it comes to being a Manbassador. So first off, I am so glad that we are talking about mental health and well-being. I know when I was struggling in the late 90s and right through to the 2000s, the words mental health were never even mentioned, to be honest, and if they did, it was often spoke about in a negative connotation. But our mental health includes our emotional, psychological and social well-being, and it affects how we think, feel and act. Sometimes we can think a certain way, that makes us feel a certain way, and then sometimes we can act out in a certain way, and sometimes that's escaping to other things that can have a detrimental effect on our well-being. I'm so glad we're talking about it. I think it's really important that we look after it. It can be maintained, it can improve, it can deteriorate. If you do absolutely nothing for your mental health and well-being, there's a good chance it deteriorates. If you do things on a day-to-day basis, there's a good chance it improves. That doesn't mean if we look after ourselves every single day, we're not going to get challenges, we're not going to have to deal with setbacks. But what I always say to people is if we promote good well-being and looking after your mental health and make it your priority, there's a good chance we deal with them setbacks and challenges a lot better. So I think because we're so used to talking about mental health in a negative connotation, people confuse the two, mental health and mental illness. But the truth is they're two very separate things. Mental health is our general state of well-being, and as I've already touched on, it's really important, just like our physical health, that we look after it. Mental illness is when something disrupts that. Now, sometimes if you don't look after your mental health, it can lead to mental illness. A little bit like me, I wasn't looking after myself for a very long time. I was bottling things up. I wasn't asking for help. And that did lead to mental illness. I was depressed, I had suicidal thoughts. I ended up on a psychiatric unit twice in my 20s because I was having suicidal thoughts and I was in quite a bad place. However, sometimes it can be genetics. We can be born with these things like bipolar, things like ADHD. These are challenges that people face, and I'm so glad now we're talking about it. What's really important though, there's clear lines in the sand, and we look at the two as separate things, but yes, they are interlinked, and it's really important we raise awareness on both topics. I think for me, speaking from personal experience, I became quite a good liar, to be honest, and it's quite difficult sometimes when people are struggling, because if you ask someone are they okay, more often than not, even when they're not, they say, yeah, I'm fine. I always encourage you to ask a second time and a third time, and putting it out there if you suspect someone's struggling. I think for me, mood and behaviour changes were a big one. Some days I'd be on top of the world and be skipping in a room, and then other days I'd be a little bit more quiet. I might isolate, I might not want to engage in conversation. Doing things that I previously enjoyed as well, that was a big one. So I had a routine growing up. I loved football, I loved going to the gym, I loved exercising. That started to change in my 20s. I didn't really want to do that. I'd go in and out of exercising because it did make me feel better, but I wasn't consistent with it. And I was sort of isolating in my own world. That was a big one. Sometimes anger, when most people are angry, there's usually a reason for it, and more often than not, they're thinking and feeling a certain way, and that anger and that outburst is because of something. It's not just because they choose to be angry. It's an emotion that sometimes people don't like, but it can sometimes make you realise that someone is struggling. And overall change, changing someone's behaviour is a massive one. When it comes to people being in work, we often talk to employers for our work with Wise Up and talk about people being off work, and that might be a red flag. But what I've found in the last few years is most people that are struggling turn up for work every single day and try and crack on and try and be resilient and work through it. So it's not just about looking at those that may be off work, because there might be some people that you sat next to in the office or on the construction site, wherever it might be, that might be struggling but showing up for work every single day. That's why I think the role of a Manbassador is really important, because we're creating an environment that people feel safe to be vulnerable and open up. And that's quite difficult when it comes to the workplace. We're getting better at it, but we've still got a lot of work to do when it comes to the workplace in creating a culture that people feel safe. But being a Manbassador almost opens the door that, we're mental health champions, we're here to help and support, and people might just feel that little bit more safe to open up. And like I keep hammering that point home, it can be life-changing and life-saving for some people. So as a Manbassador, you are that conduit for those that are struggling in your community to get that professional help and support. What's really important is we don't offer that professional help and support playing counsellor or therapist. I know that can be quite tough. I've been doing this for the last 8 years. Yes, as my role as a Manbassador, but a lot in my job at Wise Up. I was often sharing my vulnerabilities on social media. I was telling people what I was doing, and I got a lot of people reaching out. And yes, that felt rewarding and purpose-driven, but it's important there are clear lines in the sand. I'm here to listen. I'm here to offer support and practical guidance, but I can't treat whatever you are going through. And it's really important we know when to signpost to external agencies. I think it's really important as well, I hammer on that word, listen. I think sometimes when we want to give people advice, that can take over, but there's a good chance they've been bottling up their feelings for a long time if they've been struggling. So being a good listener is key when it comes to being a Manbassador. I would say it's more important than talking. Share your own vulnerabilities, yes. Talk to people why you do this role as a Manbassador. I know firsthand when someone told me when I went to rehab as a 29-year-old that they'd also been through the same program that I'd been through. One, I knew they'd struggled, and two, I knew they'd turn their life around, and I hung on to every word. So share your own vulnerabilities, but it's really more important that you listen and give that safe space and create that safe space where they want to open up. And please remember, if someone does show they're in crisis, please signpost to the nearest emergency services, whether that's 111, 999 or the local A&E. That is really, really important. This is pretty simple. We don't overcomplicate things. As a Manbassador, we're there to keep it simple. We're there to listen, show support and offer some practical guidance. But if there are safeguarding concerns, it's really important you signpost back into your Manbassador contact and they can find that person struggling the relevant help and support. Please don't ever play therapist. It's a very dangerous game to play. We're there to listen, and that's the important bit. And like I said, we can be that conduit where they get that help and support, but signpost them back into your contact. So you are a wellbeing champion. So what's really important is you prioritise your own mental health and wellbeing before you support others. How can you do that? Make sure it's at the top of your list, whether that's exercise, talking to people, having a good support network. That is really important when it comes to being a Manbassador. We need to live and breathe being a wellbeing champion. Also, you'll be having vulnerable conversations with people that share some of their own personal experiences. And I know for Stan, from doing this job for the last 8 years, sometimes that can be emotionally draining on us. So what's important in them moments when we have them conversations, if something does negatively impact us, who do we offload to? That might be a friend, a family member, it might be one of the other Manbassadors. You will always get supported in your role. So should something ever negatively impact you, make sure you've got a good support network. We can't pour from an empty cup. So prioritise your well-being and make sure you offload. So a massive well done for putting yourself forward to become a Manbassador. Without you, this project is nothing. We're here to create that safe space where men show vulnerabilities and come forward and ask for help and support. Please remember, we're not a crisis line. We're there to listen and offer that guidance. But should anyone ever be at crisis, please signpost to them emergency services. For treatment and support, there are some fantastic organisations across Greater Manchester, so please reach out and signpost them to them organisations. Finally, I just want to say a massive well done. Your role as a Manbassador can be life-changing and life-saving, and I don't say that lightly. For further opportunities to upskill yourself or training, please get in touch with your contact at Manbassadors. Thank you.